just to be clear, you didn't do it.
We know who did it, Steve. We know. And we know who spearheaded this cover-up. You all know.
Yes, we do.
If John was beaten up and attacked in that house, who did it?
We don't know.
We don't know.
We don't know. And it's not for us to know. Somebody other than Karen is responsible for that, for the killing of John.
You are listening to the Roberta Glass True Crime Report, putting the true back in true crime. From New York City, Roberta Glass is now on the record.
Okay. Here we go. Hello, Wesley loves Octoberfest. Little roll call. Rob. Here. Maestro. Here. Who else is here? Let me see. She Fly 9. Dark Side. Hello, hello, hello. Kitties 1993. Hello. All the usual suspects are here. So today, the big subject is, of course, every time I think I'm being pulled back out, I am pulled back in with Karen Reed. And now she's going to have a nonstop propaganda channel, YouTube channel by Nick Rocco, former lottery winner and Karen Reed loyalist, is going to head up her YouTube channel ahead of her. Let me see if I can show you. Hold on one second. Whoop, there it is. So ahead of her civil trial. So this was announced on X today. In the next couple weeks, I'm launching a YouTube show. This is what Nick Rocco writes. That will give you exclusive access to Karen's defense team during the civil trial. The show will mainly feature guests, mostly from the defense team. Strangely, he's not going to have the plaintiff's team on. He's not going to have the O'Keefe lawyers on. I'm shocked. Or any of the prosecutors, prosecutor Adam Lally, Hank Brennan from the criminal trial, to break down their motions and discuss what's currently happening in the case. So they're going to be propagandizing nonstop until the civil trial commences. So we don't know, I announced last episode that they handed in their motion. This is Karen Reed's lawyers. And she's dropped some lawyers and added others. So it's like still a big team of lawyers, but some have been dropped and some have been added. So she's coming in with a huge amount of lawyers for the civil trial. And she will continue to propagandize the public, but that motion to add in other people. So it's really a crazy motion in relation to what this case is all about, meaning the civil case. So the civil case is a case brought on by the O'Keefe family for wrongful death, very much like, and is often compared to O.J. Simpson. And when he got away with murdering Ron Goldman and his wife, ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, he was sued by the Goldman family civilly for wrongful death. And in this case, the O'Keefes are suing Karen Reed for wrongful death. In a civil case where our civil courts, the bar of evidence is much lower. You just have to prove it's more likely so than not. And I don't think the burden of proof was ever the really big hurdle here. It was always Karen Reed's innocence fraud campaign, in my view. That was the big hurdle. And a prosecution team that really failed to bring out all the evidence against Karen Reed, and including all her text messages and past history and whatever else that they could bring into court. There was a lot of missing pieces in the criminal trial. They also went with the idea that she was so jealous instead of really going with the truer narrative, which is the narrative of domestic violence. So murder at the end of a long string of domestic violence. So it probably never felt true, along with all the innocence fraud campaign to the jury, because it really wasn't the true narrative that Karen Reed was so jealous and she just heard about Bella's mom in the car and she flipped out. She flipped out. I've always said that was nonsense, and I'll double down on it tonight. Hey, Wesley, let's begin with some cat door cash. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Wesley. Thanks for supporting the channel. So ahead of that, I mean, sounds like she's going to go the same way that she went with the criminal case, which is just continuing to propagandize the public. So meaning try this case outside in the court of opinion where there is no rules. And with Judge Cannoni in the criminal case, there really were hardly any rules inside the court either. It wasn't much difference. It was like the Wild West in there, those criminal trials with Karen Reed. Wild. I've never seen such an out-of-control courtroom as Judge Cannoni's courtroom, as far as just flagrantly breaking the rules by Karen Reed's defense attorneys. And they were called out for it eventually, but nothing happened. It still hasn't happened to those lawyers for lying to the court or having a lack of candor to the court, which is essentially lying. Does everybody remember when that happened? Karen Reed's lawyers were called out for their heinous, they're just lying, straight up lying. Presented a witness as if it were like the ARCA witnesses, like they were impartial witnesses, that they weren't being paid. Turns out they were being paid. They could have gotten an acquittal on the first trial, just on totally bogus testimony. And I mean, we talk about corruption, but the corruption was really from the defense team in this case. But going forward, so I've been talking a lot about Karen Reed spending Christmas alone, and what was a total deterioration of what was her relationship with John O'Keefe. Things were at a breaking point. If you'd listen to we couldn't listen to the testimony, but we did read about it from Kaylee and Patrick, John O'Keefe's niece and nephew, who he was the guardian of, along with some other members of the family, but who he raised. They talk about John O'Keefe asking Karen Reed to leave his home, and she refused before Karen Reed reversed into him. So about a week before, she was being asked to leave the home, and she's refusing. John O'Keefe telling Karen Reed that the relationship had run its course, that it wasn't healthy, that John O'Keefe had recognized that it wasn't healthy. We talked about on this channel how Karen Reed demanded proof of where John O'Keefe was with a picture and who he was with. So that the last text messages between them, or that last day of text messages between them, John O'Keefe is sending a picture of his dad next to him on the couch to prove to Karen where he is and who he's with. She was keeping intense control over her victim. And this is a continuation of that. You can see a continuation of this kind of power and control in her text messages with Brian Higgins, and also her contradictory statements. So this is another excellent blog. If you're not following Innocence Fraud Watch, you're missing out. How cop killer and malignant narcissist Karen Read and her contradictory statements and web of lies help expose her manipulative tactics and guilt, including Brian Higgins' text, Erin O'Keefe, and sister Elizabeth Reed. So we're going to get all into that, her relationship with her sister, Elizabeth Reed, who we've never seen. It's always her brother, Nathan. Elizabeth Reed has been missing in action, MIA. 24th December 21, Karen Read took over John O'Keefe and his niece and nephew and family and friends' traditional Christmas get-together to keep the focus on her. So they had a certain ritual. I'll get into this in a later episode, but Karen Read insisted on her own, and she decided who was going to be invited, and who wasn't going to be invited was John O'Keefe, one of his oldest friends, Brendan Kane, who had a tradition of coming over on Christmas Eve with his wife and daughter. But before that Christmas Eve, John O'Keefe called Brendan Kane and said, my sister has my sister-in-law, Erin O'Keefe, so Paul O'Keefe's wife, Erin, has a problem with COVID, and it's going to be family only. And he was like, okay. But when reality, it was nobody had a problem with COVID. It was Karen who didn't want Brendan Kane there for whatever reason. So she was starting to isolate John O'Keefe from his friends. So Karen Read spent Christmas Day alone at her home in Mansfield. This highly significant fact has been hidden by Karen, her immediate family members, and all other enablers. And then she goes on, she puts let me see if I can switch, talking about her sister. But her sister, Elizabeth Reed, knows what Karen Read did on January 29th, 2022. So here's Karen Read's younger sister, Elizabeth, not an enabler. Karen Read does not mention her younger sister, Elizabeth, in public. But on October 30th, 2024, Vanity Fair published a story by innocence fraudster and gaslighter Julie Miller headed Karen Read Tells Her Story, Part 2, A New Trial Looms in Massachusetts. Julie Miller writes of Karen Read. So this is the Julie Miller that moved in with Karen Read to write a story. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. No journalistic integrity needed. Just move right in with the accused murderer. Though this chapter of her life has been dark and arduous, Read tells me she's witnessed the best and worst of humanity because of it. The evil people in my life, you know who you are, she says, once again directing her answers towards people who don't hear her. You know what you did. I'm at peace with my maker, and you, I promise, are not. Karen Read is said to not like her younger sister, Elizabeth. Therefore, was this who her cruel and callous message above was aimed at? So was she aiming that? Was she saying that Elizabeth knows that she's evil and she knows what she did? So here's Karen. And there's Elizabeth and her brother Nathan. And that's from the entertainment TV show A Body in the Snow. And when will Karen Read or her sister Elizabeth address what went down in the Read household over Christmas 2021? So that's just like a little history nobody asks about. Like, where's her sister? Why isn't her sister supporting her? Little odd. So moving back. So on December 30th, 2021, they were in Aruba having vacation. John O'Keefe. This is after she spent Christmas alone. Along with his niece and nephew and Karen Reed, they flew out to Aruba. And on the 31st of December, Karen Reed attacked Marietta Sullivan in the lobby of their hotel room after falsely claiming she caught John O'Keefe kissing Marietta. And on the 5th of January, they all went back home. And within a week, she's texting Brian Higgins. So they left early from that Aruba vacation. And John, if you listen to the testimony, and I played it recently, of Marietta and Laura Sullivan, where Laura Sullivan talks about trying to get John O'Keefe to open up and how he wasn't himself and he was distant and how they left. And when he said, do you want to book for next year? He was like, I need some time to get over this vacation. So the vacation was like a thing, was like a stressful event, not something relaxing for him at all. And thanks to Karen Reed and her behavior. But Karen Reed began flirting and texting with ATF agent Brian Higgins a week after flying back from Aruba. In one text, Karen had said to Brian, I'm queen of vacays too, always a good time. Well, it wasn't a good time at Aruba. And Innocence Fraud Watch writes, it's highly unlikely John and his niece and nephew and Laura Marietta Sullivan would have agreed with Karen's statement to Brian that it's always a good time that she's queen of vacations, given what went down in Aruba. I mean, they're swearing at each other. I mean, it's just like not the kind of upset you want to have on a vacation. On the 16th of 2022, things have deteriorated. In the early morning hours of January 16th, Brian Higgins left John O'Keefe's house, having arrived a few hours earlier to watch part of the Patriots playoff game against the Buffalo Bills. Karen had suggested she walk Brian out through the downstairs garage, and while doing so, she made a move on him and surprised him with a romantic kiss. And Karen Reed writes, Higgins hit on me all the time, never laid a pinky finger on him. Here's another one of her lies that her supporters ignore. Why do they all ignore her lies all the time? It's so odd, isn't it? Hours later, and now at home in Mansfield, Karen had texted Brian that things have deteriorated between her and John. The 18th of January, 2022, Karen told Brian Higgins that John O'Keefe's heart isn't in it in relation to the kids. Karen Reed writes, it's very, very complicated dynamic with the four of us. He isn't cut out for what he's doing, meaning he's not cut out for raising children. It's not that she's not cut out for raising children and has zero empathy, and the kids present constant issues. Well, the kids presented constant issues were taking away attention away from Karen Reed, for one thing. And Karen Reed wrote John O'Keefe on those last text messages that the kids made things toxic between them. So she blamed all the problems it's not her behavior, it's the presence of these children that are making things so difficult for her and John O'Keefe. I believe he believes what he's doing is right, Brian writes. Karen Reed writes, well, of course he is, but his heart isn't in it. It's only because he was very, very close to his sister. On the January 28th, 2022, but 10 days later, after telling Brian that John's heart isn't into it in relation to the kids, Karen had texted John at 5/14/23 and said his heart isn't into this, referring to their relationship. I know your heart isn't into this anymore. I felt it for a while, and especially lately. Again, it's not her relentless control and need to keep power and control over John that has made the relationship unbearable for John O'Keefe. it's the children. Below are extracts from further texts between Karen Reed and Brian Higgins, in which Karen chose to admit to tell Brian all what went down in the days before flying out to Aruba. She writes, I try very hard, but they are very spoiled. And they're not my family. My parents keep telling me I'd feel differently if they were mine or my sisters. So this seems like something she's just made up. Why would her, knowing that they don't get along, her parents are telling her she'd feel better if these kids were from her sister who she hates. They hate each other. She'd love the children of the sibling she despises. It doesn't, just sounds like something she just made up here. Brian Higgins says, what did he exactly do? And Karen Reed ignores that and says, I never got married, and now somehow I'm arguing with someone about raising kids. Brian Higgins writes, why won't you tell me? He was a puddle all day and then disappeared. Then I found him all over friend's sister in the lobby of our hotel, and she's gross, which I think may even be worse. Not sure. Oh God, did they bang? Karen Reed writes, so I was with the kids celebrating without him, which shouldn't be my role. No, I doubt it. He was a mess. Was it the first time with her, or do you think there were others? Brian writes. Karen writes back, I don't really think there were others. I'm with him all the time. He never seems to want to go anywhere without me. But honestly, the issue with the kids bothers me more than him actually cheating. They're constant, and it feels like a lose-lose. Erin O'Keefe's testimony was that Karen Reed and John O'Keefe had bickered. So bickered is like a minimizing word here about her taking them, and he said that she spoiled them. Let's take a look at that testimony, shall we?
On that date of January.
Again, it's just a bummer with this first trial with hearing. I just put the words up so you can read it. So on that date, January 28th, what, if any, conversation did you have with Miss Reed on that day?
What, if any, conversation did you have with Miss Reed on that day?
She had texted me while I was waiting for the school bus, asking if there was any chance I was out without Paul.
Was that a typical thing that she would text you as far as the without Paul part?
That's a curious thing. So Karen Reed's texting, is Paul there? So it makes you wonder if this is something that they did. Did they talk badly about their partners together? Did they talk badly about the O'Keefe family together?
No.
And you indicated that you were waiting for the school bus. Is that right?
Correct.
And at that time in January of 2022, you had two daughters, correct?
Yes, correct.
Were they sort of in the same school as far as on the same bus?
No, they were not. They're separate schools.
So fair to say one was maybe in elementary, one was in middle school?
Correct.
So as far as around that time that you received the text, would that have been the younger daughter or the older daughter that you were waiting for?
The younger daughter. It was after 3 o'clock.
And who comes home, or at that time, who came home first, the younger daughter or the older?
Our older daughter.
And when you received that text from the defendant, what, if anything, did you, or how did you respond to it?
I said that I was waiting for the school bus and we had basketball on Friday nights.
And the basketball on Friday nights, was that something that was one of your daughters or both?
Both.
And do you recall, well, let me ask you this, with regard to your daughter's basketball, at least at that time, what, if any, sort of relationship did your husband have to those basketball teams?
He was the coach for both of them.
And was that something that was sort of like a local league? Is that correct?
Town league.
Town. And did all of you, and by all I mean yourself, your husband, and the two girls, did you all go to both games that night?
Correct.
And do you recall about what time those games were?
6 or 7.
Now, Ms. Reed reached out to you and texted you, and then you responded as you described. What, if any, further conversation did you have with Ms. Reed on that day?
I asked her if everything was okay, if something was up. And she responded and said, just another day, I wish I didn't talk to an O'Keefe after 2004.
And how did you respond?
Which is such an odd thing to say because, again, Erin O'Keefe is an O'Keefe by marriage, but an O'Keefe. And if she didn't speak to an O'Keefe after 2004, she wouldn't have any friendship with Erin O'Keefe. It's like saying to someone's face, I wish I never met you. And your whole family. Like, what? Even if it's extended family.
I said, what happened? What's going on? And they had bickered, I guess, about her taking Kaylee to Dunkin' Donuts in the morning before school.
And just to be clear, when you say they, you mean Johnny O'Keefe and Karen.
Correct.
So this is, Erin never says where she heard this from. Did Karen tell this to her? Did Erin hear about this after the fact? Where is this origin of this Dunkin' Donuts story? Because I think Innocence Fraud Watch fairly debunked it by the text messages. It seemed like Karen Reed was rejected by John. She made some advances towards John O'Keefe, and he rejected them that morning when she came back after dropping Kaylee off to school. He was just into it. She said, I tried to give you a kiss, and you, whacked a pillow in my face. So am I right on that? It's my memory of it. But then it's gotten changed to this Dunkin' Donuts story, but it's also a fault of Adam Lally in that he doesn't ask. Like, how did you hear this?
Do you recall sort of how that conversation evolved, or what, if anything, else was said during that time?
I just knew that they had gotten into some type of, I don't know if it was an argument or there was something. They bickered about her taking them, and he said that she spoiled them.
Which is always a word that Karen Reed uses. See, again, it's like we have an unreliable narrator. Is this Karen Reed telling the story? She treats them too well? And that's what everyone objects to? Or is it a way to triangulate and go against the rules of the house and set up John O'Keefe against the kids and get the kids to like her? I mean, spoiled is Karen Reed, sounds like Karen Reed's version. I mean, just treat them too well when I'm not calling them toxic and horribly spoiled and a problem in my life. I really think Kaylee was the big problem. Because she was older and a young, a teenager at that point, and it would have been harder to control. But these are, just to remind everybody that these are orphans, terribly traumatized children, where Karen Reed could not be the center of attention because they needed so much attention. And Karen Reed obviously resented that.
Now, as far as your conversation with Ms. Reed in regard to the weekend, what, if anything, did the two of you talk about as far as sort of plans for the weekend?
I said I was anticipating a storm, so was probably going to hang in the neighborhood with everybody.
Now, as far as later on in that afternoon,
That's another thing, I mean, Karen Reed was told over and over again that it's going to be a storm. It's going to be a storm. It's going to be a storm. And you have this boyfriend, John O'Keefe, who never wears a jacket. and things are going very badly. Does that start your wheels spinning? That, wow, if he got caught in that storm, things could be very badly. In a way, if he got incapacitated in that storm, things could end up very badly for him. If you were looking to, quote unquote, as Karen Reed says, teach him a lesson. Karen Reed says to think that this crime wasn't planned is a mistake. Those are Karen Reed's words.
Noon, what, if any, sort of further communication did you receive from Ms. Reed that day?
I think the last text was a picture, something that popped up in her memories of my children and Kaylee and Patrick from the Cape that summer, and said, this just popped up in my memories and made me smile.
Now, did you have occasion to talk with Ms. Reed any further on that day, the 28th?
No, that was it.
Okay, so that's that. That is that. Let me
A peace plan.
Let me turn this off so it's not my headphones. Woo. Okay. So back to the end of this blog. We're almost at the end. Okay, so if Karen Reed's parents, William and Janet Reed, had told Karen she would feel differently if John O'Keefe's niece and nephew were hers or her own sisters, this alone would demonstrate how out of touch and ignorant they are. And not only were John O'Keefe and Karen Reed not together all the time, as Christmas holidays of 2021 evidence, Karen would make it difficult for John to go anywhere without her. Right. So a constant eye on her. And this was, I was trying to look for this the other day. For some reason, I thought it was in the beginning of the interview and it was at the end. But here's Brendan Kane talking about this picture. Let me pull it up. Hold on. See if I can close some of these things down. So maybe my screen will cooperate a little bit more. Let me just show you. So there's this picture of Brendan Kane and John O'Keefe, and the reason that it was taken, Brendan Kane will tell you about in just a second. So this picture. So when Brendan Kane's interviewed, you often see this picture, but this was taken for this reason. Take a listen. Please hold. I should have gotten this, but you know, the picture that I used on the thumbnail of you and John has like an interesting history. Do you want to talk about that? Like how that picture was taken?
Yeah. So you know, when all this happens,
I'll pull it in. Yeah.
And people are looking for, hey, you know, get pictures of you. As I don't know if this is like a male thing, and the fact that we didn't have cell phones in our pockets to take pictures every 5 minutes, but like we weren't like taking Polaroid pictures of ourselves like in high school or, you know, at a bar in college. Like we weren't documenting the stuff we were doing. So a lot of the pictures that I was able to unearth either came from my mom's closet from the time we were 4 to the time we were 12, from birthday parties. And then I'm actually really thankful that I have this picture you're referring to, which is the last picture we ever took. Again, one of not very many. But I kind of forgot about it a little bit in the context, but we took a picture on Lansdowne Street. It was the last Red Sox game we ever went to. It was the fall of 21. And that was the other piece with Johnny was there's always great parking. He'd always get you great parking. BPD would take care of their own on the parking. So we go to Fenway, we have a good spot, and we went into the Lansdowne bar, and he wanted to take a picture, and I'm sure I said something like, why? Like, what are you doing? And his response was essentially he had to prove to Karen where he was and who he was with. And I found that very odd. And that was like my first red flag where my spidey senses were tingling like, wait, what? I know some couples share a location and such. I share my location with my wife for safety, not because she's worried about where I am. So that was the first.
I don't think Karen Reed was worried. She wasn't worried. She was just keeping a constant eye on her victim. I mean, just had to have absolute power and control over him. And if this gets lost in the civil trial, if they go with this nonsense, Karen Reed was so jealous, when we know that one of the things that abusers do, female abusers, is they accuse their partners of having affairs when they're not, just to get them on the back foot, just to get them in a submissive position. And I don't know if there was so much shame around this issue or what, or lack of being able to see it clearly for what it was, because it's a woman doing it, not a man. But if Karen Reed were a man and she ran over, if a woman was run over the way John O'Keefe was and left to die in the snow, the whole narrative of the criminal case would have been DV. It had to be. You couldn't have looked at it any other way and then left messages, I hate you, you're a pervert. That would be the narrative. But when a woman does it, it's like alcohol, she snapped, she didn't know she hit him. I mean, even people on this side were saying like she didn't know what she did, but she just gathered up an audience so they could watch her pretend to find him and watch her theatrics, pretend to be upset and pretend to be hysterical. I mean, you can hear Carrie Roberts' interviews. She's still, like, last one I heard was she was still saying, like, Karen Reed didn't know where John O'Keefe was. She just led me right to him, exactly where he was in the snow. I don't even know if they know what they're saying, if these witnesses have been brainwashed by Karen Reed's innocence fraud propaganda or not. I don't know what the mental block is. It trauma? Is it something? Is it trauma? Is it the innocence fraud campaign? But Karen Reed knew where he was. She led them right to him. No one else saw him. And Karen Reed's kicking her door, saying, let me out, let me out. But also another really ghosted detail, of course, is the plumber story. And why the plumber story is so important is I believe Karen Reed was making up a story about a plumber to delay coming out, just to make John O'Keefe feel expendable and less than. And that totally got ghosted, both trials. You think this is going to come out in the civil trial?
Everyone is waiting for me to arrive at the bar. At home in Mansfield, I'm making up a new co-star. His name is Richie the plumber. No hot water, it's a bummer. It's all a figment of my imagination. Under my thumb. John says he and his papa would have fixed it if only this broken pipe in real life existed. Causing pain and suffering is what I do best. Putting my boyfriend's patience through test after test. Richie, my imaginary plumber, is at Home Depot, hoping that story showing up late, make him angry right out of the gate. He's slow at feeling lovey-dovey, I'm downright twisted and scummy. I'll down many drinks and run him over after it gets late. Scream and cry, it's you, John, who I hate. Leave him to die in a blizzard, inflicting pain, I'm a wizard. Get Jen to call 911, have the whole town pointing fingers when it's over and done.
Okay, so another odd thing is Karen Reed's use of who she calls after who she calls that morning. So Michael Camerano, we know. So beginning at 4:46, she doesn't text or call Brian Higgins, but she's calling the Cameranos. So Brian Higgins had last texted Karen Reed while they were at the waterfall at around 11:32. Well, the above text would presumably be the last text Karen Reed received on her iPhone on January 28th, 2022. And presumably Brian Higgins' 11:32 p.m. text was also the last received sitting in Karen Reed's iPhone inbox at 4:30 on January 29th. So why did Karen Reed first choose to contact John O'Keefe's friend Michael Camerano multiple times beginning at 4:46, 41 a.m. as opposed to Brian Higgins? This makes no logical sense. Plus, just a few hours earlier, Karen Reed had told John O'Keefe that Michael Camerano is a little off with her and apparently been for a while now. So was that her first victim? Like she knew that I think she knew the Cameranos were the type who would, just judging by their evidence, the way they gave their evidence, to put their head down and say the least incriminating things. Catherine Camerano strangely can't remember anything that Karen Reed yelled that morning. It was all a lot of yelling. Yelled, said. Everyone else remembers incriminating statements, but Catherine Camerano, all she heard was a lot of yelling. And we know what it took for Michael Camerano to mention the plumber and John O'Keefe being upset with Karen Reed that night. So why did Karen Reed choose to contact Michael Camerano, who allegedly had been off with her, but not Brian Higgins, who clearly hadn't been off with her? Karen Reed also texted Brian Higgins, John died at 11:54 a.m. when she was on her way to John O'Keefe's house with her father, brother, and sister-in-law to retrieve her murder weapon and laptop after leaving the Good Samaritan hospital. Yet she didn't send a text like this to Michael Camerano. Why did Karen Reed choose to text Brian Higgins, John died, but avoided letting him know John O'Keefe was allegedly missing? Young son injured in a hockey accident. Michael Camerano had received a call while he was in C.F. McCarthy's pub and had to leave around an hour after Karen Reed arrived because his young son was hit in the face with a hockey stick and had lost a tooth in the accident. Karen Reed had served 4 units of vodka. She had been served, 4 units of vodka by the time Michael Camerano left the pub, so she would have not have forgotten about the child's accident. In fact, Karen Reed was the last person seen talking to Michael Camerano at around 10:06:54 p.m. as he was making his way to the door to leave the pub, which he did at around 10:07:03. So there he is leaving. So if Karen Reed did think John O'Keefe was missing at 4:30 a.m., she didn't. Why did she contact Michael Camerano multiple times before anyone else? And not only did Karen Reed last see Brian Higgins in the Waterfall bar and receive an 11:32 text from him, she would have seen his light gray Jeep parked up near the mailbox outside 34 Fairview as she slowly creeped along in her car to near the flagpole at around 12:24:29. And Karen Reed would have also been aware of Brian Higgins' light gray Jeep parked up behind her while she was arguing with John O'Keefe for over 7 minutes while they were inside her car, still near the flagpole. Karen Reed would have seen Brian Higgins' light gray Jeep at around 12:32:16 after carrying out her second three-point turn to drive back to Cedar Crest Road. And if Karen Reed really did think John O'Keefe was missing at 4:30 a.m., why did she call an acquaintance, as she referred to Jen McCabe on page 11 of her April 12th, 2023 motion for order pursuant to Mass Art Criminal directed to Brian Albert, Verizon, and AT&T instead of Brian Higgins? So looking at her phone data, Karen Reed received a text from John O'Keefe reading "Blizzard tomorrow, nobody's going anywhere" at 8:33:56. And at 8:35:34, Karen received a text from John O'Keefe reading "Sure." At 11:32, Karen received a text from Brian Higgins reading well. So that's at 11:32 p.m. That's Karen received that text from Brian Higgins. And at 4:46:41 a.m., Karen calls Michael Camerano. 4:47:19, she's calling Michael Camerano again. 4:47:57, Karen Reed again, Michael Camerano. 4:49, calling Michael Camerano again. 4:49:24, she's calling Catherine Camerano. 4:51:51 a.m., Karen Reed's call to Catherine Camerano ended. And at 4:56:39, Catherine Camerano called Karen Reed back. And at 4:59:36, Catherine Camerano's call to Karen Reed ended. More importantly, why did Karen Reed call John O'Keefe's friend, Brian Higgins, whose phone number and photo she had stored in her phone and whose 11:32 p.m. text would have been the last received text showing up in her inbox? Karen Reed had been flirting with, kissing, and telling Brian Higgins intimate details about herself since January 12, 2022. During the dalliance, Karen Reed chose to tell Brian Hicks she allegedly had colon cancer and 10 surgeries in 18 months, that she was selling her house, and that she was allegedly thinking of moving to Tiverton. "I've been very sick," she writes him. "I've had colon cancer and 10 surgeries in 18 months. I'm a wreck. I had no idea. Are you okay now?" Nobody else had any idea either, because it was a lie. Another lie, that she was selling her house. Karen Reed had also been over to Brian Higgins' house on January 19th, just 10 days earlier. "Because I just assumed you were happy with your situation. I was, but things have deteriorated." So why did Karen Reed contact Brian Higgins if Karen Reed had checked her iPhone at 4:30 to see if John O'Keefe had texted or called her? The last text sitting in her inbox would have been from Brian Higgins, who she had last seen more recently in the Waterfall Bar, not McCarthy's Pub, from where Michael Camerano had to leave earlier to pick up his son. So Karen Reed continues to hide all of her iPhone data from her dupes and her enablers, and who would have knowingly been involved in promoting this innocence fraud phenomenon scam, like Aiden Turtleboy Carney, and they don't care about it because it aids their own fraud. Aiden Carney published a blog on May 10th, 2023, as part of his fraudulent Canton cover-up Fire Hose of Falsehood blog series with the header, "What's Been Hidden on Karen Reed's Cell Phone?" And he's avoided the topic ever since. Did Karen Reed delete her messages between herself and Brian Higgins from her iPhone before police seized her iPhone? And it would be a really good idea if anyone who received messages from Karen Read, to put them out in the public domain, whether it's Erin O'Keefe or Jen McCabe or Carrie Roberts, put out those text messages, because Karen Read is hiding them all. And when accused killers hide their cell phone data, or basically ghost anything, it's usually something important. Why did killer choose to target an acquaintance? And why did Karen Read target Jen McCabe as opposed to Brian Higgins if she genuinely thought John O'Keefe was missing at 4:30 a.m.? Jennifer McCabe was a stay-at-home mom, mother of 4, whereas Brian Higgins was an ATF agent. So what was Karen Read's logic and reason to target the former? If John O'Keefe was allegedly missing and Karen Read had said they got into a fight and she left him at the waterfall, why not contact someone like Brian Higgins for help allegedly locating missing, quote unquote, missing John, instead of Michael Camerano, who had only been in McCarthy's pub for an hour? All really good points. I mean, it seemed to me obvious that she's targeting people that she could later point the finger at, get to call 911. I mean, to me, it's highly significant that Jen McCabe called 911 and Karen Read didn't. And Karen Read got Jen McCabe to search how long to die in the cold while Karen didn't. So she could point the finger at them later. I think she's been doing this her whole life, mixing in characters and pointing in the finger at them instead of herself. Because if she had gone and found where she left John O'Keefe after reversing into him with her foot 75% down on the gas pedal at 24 miles per hour, she went back that morning to where she left him to find him, and then called 911 alone, it would just be Karen Read. Who else would there be to be lame? No one else but Karen Read. So that is what I have for today. So this will just go on and on until I hope the civil lawyers will get smarter on this. And, they're not just fighting. I think the mistake is the idea that they can just win in court because the facts will just win their case. When they're dealing with an innocence fraud campaign, it's a little bit different. The jury has already been so compromised and so tainted that they really do have to think about if I were Karen Read's civil lawyers, I would get out all the information I could out into the public domain, the details that have been hidden in this case. It's the most important thing, and start working on a really true narrative of this case instead of the fake, phony narrative we heard at trial with the Karen Read is so jealous nonsense. That would be my advice. So please hit the thumbs up on your way out. Support the channel. Great ways. Buy me a coffee, Venmo, Patreon. Links in the description of this and every episode. Thanks so much for listening, guys. I will be back very shortly. It's always at 6 p.m. I'll see you guys then. Have a great night, everyone.
I hit my boyfriend with my car. It wasn't an accident, but with lying lawyers I'll go far. Lying lawyers and witness harassment. I'll avoid prison. It was snowing. I pushed the pedal down, hit him hard. Now the legal system I clown. Innocence fraud campaign to save my skin. Making money, truth is my second victim. Carry, Jen, like John, you were my mark. My innocence fraud campaign is my biggest hit. I pushed the pedal down, hit him hard, now the legal system I clown. Innocence fraud campaign to save my skin. Making money, truth is my second victim.